This is the One Accord Podcast, and on today's episode of the Biblical Theology Project, we are going to be tackling Numbers chapter 5, 6, 7, and 8, and I'm excited about that. I think there's at least one observation that many people probably skip right over, and so I'm excited to talk about that with these guys, and so let's go ahead and bring on the rest of the team. I'm going to switch up the order a little bit. Eric, how are you today?
Well, now that you asked me first, I'm doing even better than I was before. I'm always excited to start my week with you guys going through these scriptures. I learn something new preparing for the show every time, at least one thing, and I really enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to tackling this with you guys and seeing what your opinions are.
Amen. Well, it is amazing that the Bible is such a rich and deep book that you can study it for a lifetime and still never get to the end of it. And so, like you, I'm excited to talk about these things more. And I do repent, and I'm sorry for making your life worse by not asking you first most of the time. If I knew it was so easy to improve your life, I would have asked you first every single time. So, but Greg, how about you? How are you doing today?
Better than Eric, so I'm doing very well. Yeah, no, good weekend, good start to a week, and ready to tackle another couple chapters in, what are we in? Numbers. We're going to tackle a couple chapters in Numbers.
He's ready to tackle it. He doesn't know where we're at exactly, but he is ready for it somehow. So I guess we'll let the viewers figure that one out on their own, and we'll bring in Micah. Micah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I had a full weekend of ministry, including Saturday night. I got to preach the gospel in the open air, which I don't get to do that often, and I got to make some liberals really, really mad. So, yeah, bonus points for that.
What'd you do, like speak the truth or something? Or?
Yeah, I just said true things, and I mostly just preached about the love of God and the gospel, and that was enough to do it. So
that'll do.
Well, it is amazing that does cause some people to be irate. It made them irate when Jesus did it, and so anyway, well, praise the Lord for your opportunity to proclaim the truth. We know that God's word accomplishes its work, and it won't return void. So, Greg, were you about to say something? Did I cut you off?
It's just a little bit of truth. It's enough to make people irate for sure.
Well, let's move into our material for today. So Numbers chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8 is what we're planning to discuss. If you're watching this and you're not familiar with those chapters, we would strongly encourage you to press pause here and go ahead and read those chapters for yourself. If you are familiar with them, then you can follow right along, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But any of you guys got something to get us started with in our discussion today?
I do. As I was reading the chapter, it just struck me that at the very beginning, God begins by commanding Moses to send away all those who were unclean. And that's mentioned in verses 1 through 4. And at first glance, it seemed like almost like an awkward transition from talking about the individual tribes before to all of a sudden, sending away all these unclean people out of the camp. So, what do you guys think of that? Do you guys have any idea about why God would have transitioned from the one thing to this? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they are talking about moving the tabernacle, right? I mean, they're talking about at the end of chapter 4, or is it throughout the entirety of chapter 4? They're talking about the duties of the duties of these various Levites. With relation to the transportation of the tabernacle. So while it might seem to be sort of a natural or an unnatural break or transition when it comes to, like, you're talking about the duties of these people, and then, and get all the unclean people out of the camp, it would have actually probably seemed fairly natural of a transition to them, because they were already told that the cleanness of the people was prerequisite to the presence of God dwelling in their midst. So it's no different when they're transporting the tabernacle from where they are currently as they go, and they're going to try to take the promised land.
Greg, anything to add to that?
Well, I just say, we don't see everything being recorded as it plays out, right? Like this is Moses coming back and writing what happened, and so I don't know that this would have been as abrupt as maybe it feels here in the text. Maybe it was. But they've already been told in the past that these people can't remain in the camp. So, as I'm giving instructions to my kids, you do this and this and this and this and this. Now go do it. No, but they didn't have, at least so far as I can recall, that now go do it in relation to this command. And so this is where it fell after the counting, which would probably make things a whole lot more logical and reasonable. You know, we've done some census taking, and now that we've taken the census, it's not that these people who are unclean or lepers aren't members still of their tribe and need to be counted, but now that we have their number, now go and do it, separate, go ahead and have them leave the camp until they can be cleansed.
That's a good observation. What do you think, Joe? Any thoughts?
I mean, I think Greg basically said everything I would have said. I agreed with what Micah was saying as well, but if I had the chance to speak before Greg, I probably would have stolen his thunder, but I think he stole mine. So yeah, I agree with Greg 100%.
I want that clipped out. I want a short of that reel or whatever it's called.
That's going to be your ringtone. I agree with Greg 100%. I agree with Greg 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the broader context emphasizes the importance of maintaining both ceremonial and moral purity. And in Numbers 5, verses 1 through 4, sending out, and this goes right along with what Micah was saying, sending all who were unclean outside the camp was a way of maintaining ceremonial purity, within Israel. And so it makes sense, actually, that God gave this command, given what's going on in their current situation. Even like the adultery test later in the chapter deals with, moral purity. For example, like in Numbers 5:28, it says, but if the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, she will then be free and conceive children. Like in the next chapter 6, even talks about the Nazarite, and it emphasizes the need for ceremonial cleanness when it says all the days of his separation to the Lord he shall not go near to a dead person. So there's this emphasis on being ceremonially clean. We have the tabernacle now. The Levites are responsible for maintaining the tabernacle, which involves, of course, maintaining cleanness. And so, so it actually does make sense. Even in chapter 8, the Levites are cleansed and set apart for the priesthood. So there's this repetition of cleanness in the camp. And as Micah said, that makes perfect sense, given the fact that, now there's the Levites are being entrusted with the tabernacle and maintaining cleanness within Israel. So that was, so that I was, not seeing anything different than what you guys said.
I mean, the whole book of Leviticus is about that. We discussed it, how easy it was to become unclean, how easy it was to be put away. It's almost, reading through the book of Leviticus, I'm surprised almost anybody even stayed in the camp, really. But yes, this emphasis, as you're drawing out, is certainly, it's all over the place.
For sure. I had another question. I had mentioned the adultery test before, and the chapter includes instructions concerning the adultery test. And basically, what was going on there was when a husband suspected his wife may have been unfaithful to him, she was brought to the priest and made to drink, it's called the water of bitterness. And if the wife was guilty of unfaithfulness, her thigh would waste away and her abdomen would swell. That's what the text says. But if she was innocent, she would be immune to the water and she wouldn't suffer any ill effects. So my question is, why couldn't the priest or a prophet seek the truth from God without having to carry out this rigorous test? Because we saw, like in previous chapters, if there was a dispute, Moses would bring this before God. The people would bring this before Moses. Moses would bring it before God, and then God would give Moses a verdict, if you will. So why couldn't they just do something like that rather than go through this rigorous test?
Could it have something to do with the public demonstration of evidence? That's what I kept thinking as I was reading through this. If God just tells Moses what the answer is, and then Moses comes out and says what the verdict is, that would be enough. But maybe it's God's grace in giving them a public means of even supernatural demonstration of what the facts of this case are. That's where my mind went. Maybe this is just giving them an avenue of public adjudication, public proclamation.
That's actually a really interesting and great point. I think the nature of it. I mean, if we had to pick between the two things, Eric, what you're suggesting is a possible alternative, which certainly seems like a reasonable question, and then this. Okay, you do all this, and then does she have these effects or does she not? If she was publicly accused, now this is a very public clearing of her name if that happens. And so I think that's a really interesting point that I hadn't considered, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, I guess I see this a little bit more practically, just where my mind went. Yeah, I agree. At this point, we have Moses who goes and talks to God face to face, like one man talks to another. That's not how it's going to be moving forward. Priests are only allowed to approach into the Holy of Holies once a year, and so this was seeking the truth from God. Just because there's a mediated step in between, I see this no less a direct answer from God. It's miraculous, right? If you drink this water of bitterness and you're innocent of sin, nothing happens to you. If you drink this water and you're not innocent, you swell up and all kinds of horrible things happen to you. That is an answer from God. So God just says, listen, instead of coming to see me face to face, and maybe you're only allowed to do that once a year, so we're not going to wait the year. I'm going to give you this other way to hear from me. I see this as no less directly from God, even though there's a mediated step in between, if you even want to call it that. There's a method besides the face-to-face, but they aren't going to have that face-to-face relationship in, not 40 years, but 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. They aren't going to have this. So here is how you can hear directly from God regarding this thing.
I don't mean to insinuate that this is why Eric's asking the question. As I hear a question like this, I can't help but hear it with the voices of other people that I've talked about Scripture with, that this passage tends to fall into a category of things that I don't know, like a nice way to say it, that it just sounds superstitious to people, like this, casting lots, with Jacob with the rods. There's certain passages that just sound, they just sound silly, especially to non-believers.
Or mystical, maybe. Would be
mystical. And so, when we use the term supernatural, I agree with that, but I do recognize that some people go, well, God could supernaturally answer through a prophet, or he could supernaturally answer kind of through this rigmarole, and it seems like this is more, more pagan to some degree, or more, again, superstitious than direct divine revelation, rather than a direct encounter from God speaking from a burning bush or something which is undeniably miraculous. Now, of course, I don't take it that way, but I don't know if Eric, if that's the reason why you're asking this question, but I know that like a passage like this, and there's several other ones that kind of fall into that category of people saying, why is God going through these means? It almost looks superstitious, or allowing for fate or some other kind of weird means other than a much more direct encounter. God could speak from the heavens and just say she's innocent, knock it off, leave her alone, and then everybody would still have the same, awe and wonder from a clearly direct revelation. But this isn't a mountain smoking and quaking and burning. This is, seemingly much less dramatic. And the woman accused has to go through something regardless. I mean, I wouldn't want to drink this water, period. Based on what's described, I wouldn't want to imbibe this no matter what the situation was personally. So I don't know if that makes any sense, or Eric, if that has, like I said, I'm not trying to attribute that to you. I hear a question like that, and that's kind of the thoughts that I have. And I wonder if some of our viewers watching this, as they read this, they go, this just kind of reads a little strange.
Well, it wasn't so much an accusation of it being superstitious, but just the amount of effort, like the more so the method, and you had to take the dust from the floor and mix it in the water, and it wasn't so much the
you write the curse and you wash it into the thing. So there's a lot to drink there.
it was a multi-step process.
Yeah.
But as Greg said, and I think that's more or less what I was thinking, this test was a way to seek the truth directly from God. Bringing the wife before the priest was like bringing her before God to be tried, because remember, the priests were representatives. And I don't believe the water naturally caused an adulterous woman's thigh to waste away and her abdomen to swell. God's the one who caused that to happen, assuming the woman was guilty. And if she was innocent, then she remained unaffected by all this. So the result, whether good or bad, was God's judgment on the matter. And we'll see in other. Well, I don't want to get ahead, but similar things like drinking, curses or eating curses, if you will. Similar things happen in the future, and without giving all the details. So this is not like this is not the first time and the only time that something like this happens in Scripture. So I see this as God is answering directly by the effect that happens on the woman, whether it's a negative effect or positively nothing happens at all. So I think this is a way to go directly to God.
I certainly agree with all that, and none of my comments were thinking that you or anybody else, myself included, thinks this way. I hear a question like this, and this is, and I know, I don't want to run ahead and give myself demerits either, but we'll see that this is not the first time, this won't be the last time that we'll read things that almost seem like this is the kind of stuff you would expect more from, the maybe the Canaanite religions or somebody else. And of course, if you believe that you're divinely hearing, anybody that would do something like this, messing around with a Ouija board or whatever else, you think that you're getting some sort of answer from some sort of deity or deities or spiritual realm or something like that. But this doesn't seem as different maybe as it could from the true and living God, as opposed to some of these other scientific things. I mean, casting lots could just look like chance to somebody. Of course, if I think this is discerning God's will, but somebody else is like, it's just a flip of a coin or something like that. This kind of a thing, you're right. Both answers do, though, seem like they're supernatural. It doesn't seem like this effect either way. Or if anything, the effect of having no effect would probably be the most natural response. Like if God's going to demonstrate the curse, he's going to go into this and cause something that really shouldn't be caused from whatever is happening here. So it is an interesting passage. And again, I do agree with all the sentiments that this is God's ordained means for, getting his answer. But your question at the beginning is a good one. Why all of this as opposed to something else? And like I said, maybe I've just had different conversations with people than you guys have, but I know that this is a passage where oftentimes, especially if people are reading the Bible for the first time, they go, what in the world am I reading here? What is this?
What I think makes people say, this just seems superstitious, it's a combination of a couple elements. First of all, most moderns are uncomfortable with how utterly supernatural the worldview is that's the Bible is proposing. Even if they would say they aren't, like they're much more comfortable with all of a sudden God speaking out of the heavens when no one's expecting it than they are with the supernatural, the utterly supernatural governance that God is promising his people in the Old Covenant theocracy. He's promising these people like access to supernatural answers by means of a ritual. But if someone compared it to like the Ouija board or something else like that, what makes something superstitious isn't just its connection with the supernatural, and it's not just its connection with ceremony. It's not a supernatural answer given through a ceremony. It's whether God has actually said that thing or not. That's what makes something just bare superstition versus something divinely inspired and reasonable. It's, has God actually said this? And if he has, then that takes it out of the realm of the superstitious and puts it into the realm of being inherently reasonable because the God of creation said to do it. So it all comes from this sort of discomfort, post-Darwin discomfort with the supernatural, I think.
That's a great point. I want to just add one thing that might be helpful, because as I was looking at this and looking at the different opinions on this earlier this week, I had stumbled upon someone who said, well, this is just so disrespectful to women. But actually, if you think about it, it's not, because if the woman was innocent, then she was publicly vindicated, and everyone would know, no, her husband had this superstition or this suspicion. I got the superstition in my head here. This suspicion for no reason. This was not justified. She's innocent. We know now she's innocent. She drank the the water, nothing happened. So she's vindicated before anybody. And also, if a man was caught in the act of adultery, he was killed along with the the adulteress. So it's not like the man just gets off scot-free and the woman's the only one punished.
Do you have any idea what could have happened to women in other ancient Near Eastern cultures who even had an accusation of adultery brought up against them? Like,
well, I do actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I know that was rhetorical to you guys.
Yeah,
but it was just in many cases the accusation alone is enough. God is being merciful here. He's saying, look, she can be publicly vindicated, or the husband can be publicly vindicated, but my justice is going to be done.
There are cultures today that standard isn't a whole lot different than it was in ancient Near East cultures. So I would, the Christian, as it turns out, the standard that God set in the Bible is best. So I picked up on one detail of this, and again, I'm sure eventually where I'll be going with this detail, but it stood out to me because this is a semi-important topic to me. In verse 18, as part of this process or part of this ritual, if you want to call it a ritual, one part of it is the woman letting a woman's head go loose, the hair of her head go loose. Thoughts on why that is? Thoughts on why that would be an important step of this process? Anything that you have around that detail?
It seems to me that it's implying a certain measure of exposure. Exposure entailed at least the possibility of invoking shame. So, like, if she's in a situation where she's in a situation where she's being accused of something horrific, the letting down of her hair is at least introducing the possibility of her being publicly shamed. That's how I read it.
My answer was very similar. I think letting her hair go loose may have symbolized the fact that she was exposed before God. Actually, it says in verse 16, it says, "Then the priest shall bring her near and have her stand before the Lord." And it gives you the impression that she is being exposed before the Lord. God is seeing her for who she really is, because God knows all things. He knows the truth of the matter. He knows whether she's innocent or guilty. And so it's like, by letting her hair down, it's just a way of saying she is standing as her unhidden self before God. Everything is exposed, and nothing is going to escape God's notice here. So that's more or less what Micah was saying. That's the impression that I got. And if it turns out that she was guilty, it would have been viewed as shameful to have her hair down.
My guess is that you're asking this about because it's relation to head coverings. Is that why you're asking the question? I mean, that's you're telegraphing your
yes. Well, I'm raising the possibility that this might have connection to some future thing. I don't know what you're talking about because we haven't gotten there in the text yet. So maybe you've earned yourself a demerit. But yeah.
I mean, is that not exactly what your intention was?
I wasn't planning on going there. I'm planning on raising this now so that as we talk in the future, we could come back. And I was not going to force a discussion.
We don't have to run ahead. If you want to make the observation or the assertion that this it means that women had their heads covered, and that this is now telling them to unbind their head covering and to allow this down, you don't need to run ahead for that. So, I mean, is that the observation you're trying to make?
Now it's a potential way to understand that.
It is a potential way to understand.
Do you want to make the case that women covering their hair is something that is required by natural law, meaning God's law revealed in creation?
Am I going to do that based on this text alone? Absolutely not. And so I would wait if possibly that point is made later in the text. I would want to do that. Yeah.
Say what you mean, Greg.
I just said exactly what I meant. Listen, we are all responsible for coming up with questions to ask of the text. And this is the question I chose to ask. Right. Stop picking on me for choosing my question.
I wasn't.
Maybe you should have gone with the question.
I wasn't picking on you. I was trying to get, neither of the guys that answered your question got to what I thought you were trying to get us to. So I wanted us to get.
I was
to the
asking
heart.
for observations. I wasn't trying to force us to have a conversation.
Is that
on
the observation that you're making? I guess is my question.
I think that this ought to factor into an overall picture regarding what was practiced prior to the church, since we're going there, what was practiced at the time of the apostles, and there might be some spiritual significance to if this letting down of their hair incorporated was wrapped up in there was taking off a head covering. And I'm not saying it says that, because it doesn't say that. But maybe there is something more timeless wrapped up in this, in her hair being wrapped up, than we recognize today.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that you made your observation, because the other guys didn't make that one for you. And so you were asking the question. I think it's a fair question to ask. So I certainly wasn't picking on you, Greg. I just wanted the observation that you were trying to lead us to, at least to the best of my understanding as I was listening to their answers, they weren't going to make it for you. So,
I was picking on him.
Okay. So that's good. Micah was picking on you, but it is a fair question to ask. And I guess my question would be, we've seen so much detail in the law about various things, and we'll certainly see more. And if there was a idea that their head must be covered, or that this is some necessary thing that continued from that point forward or whatever, it is interesting to me that it wasn't made explicit. And so if this is simply an implicit idea that, of course, all women must have their heads covered with what we would think of as a head covering, then that is not certainly a necessary interpretation of this. The idea that a desert-dwelling people would have things on their head, or that women who would have naturally longer hair would often bind it in some way just to keep it out of their faces so it's not free-flowing all the time. I mean, a woman could put her hair into some sort of a bun, or I have a number of women who live in my household. They have longer hair, and if it's just free flowing all the time, it would constantly be getting it. So they can bind their hair without covering their hair. And so the question is this being exposing the head, or unbinding their hair, or uncovering her head. All of those things are certainly potential translations of what's going on here. And so it might just simply be a very pragmatic thing. It might be some tied to authority that, she's been accused by her husband, and now she's standing before the Lord. And so she is taking herself out from under the authority of her husband and putting herself directly under the authority of the Lord. These are all interesting matters to discuss, or at least they're interesting to me. And so I don't have necessarily an answer for it, but I think that those are all potential possibilities and raised by what you're asking here.
Well, you've said it better than I could, so
well,
I'm glad.
I wanted to make sure that the point that you were making was, anyway, we can move on.
All right, well, I had a question from chapter 6. The chapter includes the laws for the Nazarite, or the Nazarite vow. What do you guys think the main purpose of the Nazarite vow was?
I think that one of the main purposes was a way for lay people within the nation of Israel to demonstrate total consecration or total dedication to the Lord. This is not this was something that a lay person could take onto themselves. It wasn't something that was in most cases, it's not something that they were just born into. It was something that was voluntary under most circumstances. They would take the Nazarite vow to themselves, and a man or a woman could do this, which is interesting. That's what verse 2 says. Speak to the people of Israel and say, when either a man or a woman makes a special vow, the vow of a Nazarite to separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and strong drink. Then it goes through all the elements of this vow. I think that it's primarily a way for lay Israelites who are not part of the priestly class or some other type of person that's already devoted to the Lord by birth, to demonstrate their consecration to him for at least a season in time.
I think Micah said it very well. This seems to be, and again, I appreciate his recognition that this isn't for the priestly class. It's for anybody who wants to, in particular, set themselves apart as holy. Yeah, for me, right, the interesting thing that I see here is this is the first time, at least to my recollection, that God sets apart not just wine and strong drink, but like anything related to grapes as that. If you're going to be holy to the Lord, you have to be set apart from grapes. And so as I read this, like it makes sense to me, like, hey, no wine or strong drink, but dried grapes and the skin of grapes and anything. Thoughts on that and why that would be particularly important? Are grapes in and of themselves unholy, or?
I do think it's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer that last part. I don't think grapes are inherently unholy. I think that as I've looked at this, and I don't know if this is the intention of what you're asking, so maybe the other guys can better answer the real question that you're asking, but I do think that you're correct. This is the first prohibition of that. Obviously, drunkenness is a sin, but some people take that to an extreme to say that nobody in any kind of Judaic setting or Christians by extension could ever drink any wine or ever drink any strong drink or liquor. But this is a separate vow where that's part of the vow, which by its implication seems that if you're not under this vow, you're not bound by this, that there is some sort of, ability for people to have. And so if it was inherently unholy, it seems like it would just be forbidden for everyone. Mm-hmm. And so this is a step of extra holiness where you could willingly lay down your freedom to participate in certain things, not to excess, but you could participate in them. But now if you're a Nazarite and you're under a Nazarite vow, now you're taking, extra steps to say, like, I'm not going to do this. So, if you have a different analogy of fasting, for example, or you want to do, some sort of extra steps of holiness to like dedicate yourself to the Lord for some season of life, that seems to be what this is. And so, no, I don't, I guess maybe that does answer the question directly. Like, I don't think grapes are inherently unholy. I don't think that even strong drink is inherently unholy. I know that challenged a lot of the presuppositions I had when I first came to the Lord and was reading through the scriptures. But of course, people, as you've said before, Greg, love to run to the ditch on either side. Either you must abstain completely, or you can imbibe as freely as you want. No, there seems to be a very clear middle path, and the Nazarite vow is then saying, no, we're going to swing to the side of complete abstaining from these things as a temporary measure, which again to me implicates that wasn't always the case. So I don't know that God would say, hey, here's some inherently unholy things that you can participate in unless you're doing a Nazarite vow. That just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
What seems clear to me is that raisins have no place in cookies. So I think that ought to be part of the Nazarite vow. So
if Greg were president of the world or king of the world, no raisins and cookies. Here, I could say amen to the end. I might object to other dictates from Greg, but that one I could go along with.
I'm here.
I'm getting a lot of agreement out of you today, Joe. This is let's mark this one on the calendar.
It's a weird day. I don't know what's going on.
I'm here for the raisins, actually. But only in oatmeal.
Have you tried chocolate? You should try chocolate.
Have you tried chocolate?
I think that there's probably a strong parallel here between this and other, Greg won't like this, but ceremonial laws that, like laws against mixed fabrics. There's nothing inherently unholy about mixed fabrics. It's intended as a living illustration of this people's consecration to the Lord and their separateness. I think this is probably the case to an increased degree with the Nazarites. It's a living illustration. Not only are they not going to touch wine or strong drink, but they're actually not even going to touch anything regarding grapes or that which could produce wine or strong drink. So I think it's probably just an intensification of the illustration of their separateness.
Why would I not like?
I thought you didn't like the threefold division of the law.
Oh, please don't hear me say I don't like that. What I don't want to do is overly emphasize categories that aren't clearly defined in Scripture. Like as I read the text, like I can see that too, but I don't want to make more of it than what the text makes of it. So I have absolutely I've used that model. I've taught from that model. I've explained through that model. I just don't want to make it as rigid as some people would.
Okay. I retract my jab.
Eric says, yeah, sure, whatever. Whatever.
Anyway,
moving on.
I got two points I want to make.
And they're obviously better than mine, so please do so.
Yeah. Anyway, so the first thing is, this is something that Joe said. I've heard people say, well, God never allowed anyone to drink alcohol. It was only grape juice that he allowed them to drink, and it was non-alcoholic grape juice. Well, notice that Numbers 6:3 makes a distinction between wine and strong drink and grape juice, as if they're not the same thing. These are two different things. Now, why then? Why did God forbid even drinking grape juice? Because wine makes sense because wine can lead to drunkenness, but grape juice, it doesn't seem as clear. I'll offer a possibility, and that is that that if you drink something that's, let's say, like wine comes from grape juice. Okay, in this case, if a person drank grape juice, they might be tempted to go even further and actually drink wine and violate their vow. So it might just be a way of like making no provision for the flesh with regard to its lusts. So like you don't tempt yourself with, even with grapes or grape juice, you abstain even from that. Because if you abstain even from that, it's more likely that you're going to refrain from going all the way and actually drinking wine.
Is that a big challenge for drinking grape?
I've never. I'm not convinced that.
At this
we shouldn't give it to kids.
I know that prohibition
grape juice to kids
against raisins is because if I eat a handful of raisins, I might go, you know what? In for a pinch, in for a pound, I'm going to go get drunk. Like I'm not convinced that that's.
I know that every time I taste grape juice,
people.
I'm like, let's go get some wine.
let's go get Taiwan on.
I mean, you might be. I'm not trying to be silly. That is not a temptation. If that is a temptation, it's not one that I have full freedom over that one.
We live
never
in 21st
ate a raisin
century.
and wanted a bottle of wine.
We live in 21st century America. So we don't live in the desert where, the temptation to drink wine.
Okay. That's fair.
Our context is radically different. We're talking about these people, who knows how much even, I don't know. God gave them water, of course, but I think for them, for us, of course, it's not a temptation. We're not in their situation, but for them, it probably was more of a temptation, given the fact they didn't have 300,000 drinks to choose from wandering through the desert. So anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, this to me, and again, I'm just telling you my impression as I read this. Grapes in the desert were probably a luxury. And so this is, I think of this more as like a fasting thing. Why do I fast from food? So that I can focus on something that is more satisfying than food. And so I don't see you're not even allowed to eat seeds or the skins of grape as having anything inherently to do with the fact that you can't even make wine from grape seeds. But I don't think it ties back to drunkenness. I think it ties back to your satisfaction coming from God and you being set apart. And so God could have chosen, maybe he could have chosen figs, right? Because figs have the highest sugar content, but he didn't choose that. He chose grapes. And I think it's incidental that all the other things that grapes can make wine isn't why he prohibited eating seeds, eating skins, or even fresh or dried grapes.
So I think that the personal spiritual life of the Nazarite, that could be a factor here, but I think that the emphasis in the text is overwhelmingly with the public separation because of the next two qualifications here. All the days of the vow of his separation, no razor shall touch his head. All the time until the time is completed for which he separates himself to the Lord, he shall be holy. He shall let the locks of his head grow long. And then the next one, all the days of his life that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body, not even for his father or for his mother. The qualifications for like uncleanness with regard to a dead body, where you could go near the members of your family. Am I misremembering that?
No,
you're right.
So like this is an added degree demonstrating even more public separation, even more public consecration. I think it's probably right to see the grapes primarily through that lens as well. But there could be other spiritual
public and private, right? I would say total. I put it this way: it's not necessarily all about public. It's definitely not necessarily all about private. I think it is a holistic separation.
Those are all fair points. Eric, you said you had 2 points to make, and we only let you make one of them, and then we kind of derailed you. So what was your second point?
No, the first point was about the distinction between wine and grape juice. The second was the reason to avoid grape juice. It's kind of like the idea. I don't know. I guess I'm thinking of like, it's kind of like the idea of, as they say, like with sin, nipping it in the bud. Like don't even put any stumbling block in your way. As kind of where I was coming from. Like if there's anything that even might tempt you, that might get your mind even going in that direction, avoid all of it. Don't put any temptation of any kind. I don't know. You guys, what you said, I of course agree with. This is talking about a separation from normal living. Matter of fact, it says, like in verse 5, he shall be holy unto the Lord, he shall be holy until the days are fulfilled, for which he separated himself to the Lord. Again, he was holy at this time. He was separated to the Lord from normal life. So I'm of course I include that. But anyway, the temptation thing was just
So you're just to go with this is application, not interpretation. So I'm free from the threat of demerits here. I just want to make that clear.
Oh.
Romans 13:14, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. It doesn't just say don't sin. It is don't make provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. Is that similar to the point you're making, Eric?
I quoted that verse earlier.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you both get it to
I was very subtle about it. I was so subtle, in fact, no one caught it.
Joe, get your podcast under control.
We're doing
getting a little rowdy
application.
here. Yeah, so that's the point that I was trying to make. That's the direction I was going.
We do have a little more latitude with applications, but the direct quotation of scriptures is gonna earn you a demerit every time. It's all right. I mean, your point is well made, but demerits for Micah and Eric, and we can move on.
Fair enough.
Me declaring that I was free from the threat of demerits didn't work.
Yeah, that also was. I just was delighted by your boldness and brashness. The newest guy on the podcast, like, this is how the rules are going to work. Like, all right.
I'm speaking this into existence.
I see Eric's trying to do it again or something.
So I got another question about Numbers chapter 6. At the end of the chapter, we read about the Aaronic Blessing found in verses 24 through 26. So what is the significance of the Aaronic Blessing in your guys' view?
I like the Aaronic Blessing a little bit better, but yeah, we can talk about the Aaronic Blessing.
Okay.
Okay,
cool.
It's an invocation of the presence of God, the presence and the blessing of God on his people as they went in to accomplish this mission. That's all that's all the observation that I really have about it.
Greg, enlighten us further.
No, I'm going to agree with Micah there. The idea of the ongoing presence and graciousness of God going with people. I love this. This is something that, when we finish a church service, there's something beautiful about a nice formal sending out, and I think this would be a great one. Yeah.
I have nothing really substantive to add. I agree. It's beautiful in how deep and rich it is, and also in how concise it is. And there's not really much that you would need to add or whatever else. I know that sometimes when you have these things like an invocation or a blessing of this sort, people can, you start to tune out because you might hear it so often. But this blessing of God's face shining upon them, giving them peace, being with them. What else? What else do they need? That's pretty much it.
Well, and it's also a symbol of God's authority. It's verse 27. So they shall put my name upon the people of Israel, and I will bless them. So it's also a charging them with the underneath the authority of God in this mission that they're going to carry out too. So I think that if you're just drawing it into our present day, that's massively significant. Oftentimes we do end our church services with this exact blessing, is because we're declaring to the people that the name of the triune God is resting on you as you go to be his ambassadors in the world.
Yeah, what stuck out to me was verse 23, where it says, "Speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, thus you shall bless the sons of Israel." You are the ones they're going to be declaring this blessing. And the blessing consists, as you guys already said, of primarily three things: God's protection, which makes sense because they're going into the land. They're going to try and conquer the land. God's favor, and then God's peace. These are all things that they would need to accomplish the mission that God gave them. Not that they would only need it for that purpose. This blessing could be given in other situations too, but it struck me that it was like, this is a blessing that the priests were supposed to speak or declare. So that's like it doesn't seem to me like just anybody could could speak this, but
I think their role as their mediatory role and their service as the representatives of the people before God gave them a special position in which to issue this blessing.
Right.
And so what a great gift to be able to give to the people as the priest, that you are putting the name of the Lord on the people, or invoking it on the people. What a great responsibility, what a great blessing to be able to do that.
The only other things that I have to add would earn me just a slew of demerits, and
I already know what they are.
My reputation can't handle that, so I'm gonna remain silent.
I already know where you're going, so we'll just move on from there. All right, well, let's get into Numbers chapter 7, and there's a lot going on in this chapter. There's a lot in the other chapters too, but we see that the tribal leaders they're giving offerings to the Lord. So what was the purpose of the offerings given by the tribal leaders in this chapter?
I mean, as I read it, the offering, the purpose of them was for service to and outfitting of the tabernacle, or how the tabernacle was going to be transported in some cases. And so and again, as I read the text, I don't know if the leader himself was coming up with all this offering, or if it came from the tribe, but there were practical needs that were required to support the tabernacle, and that came from the people, or at least from the leaders of the people as representatives of their tribes.
They had to get the tabernacle from A to B somehow. So, I mean, that's just a really practical purpose. They have to have wagons and oxen for it.
Well, as a follow-up for that, so you get all these wagons and these oxen, but based on the divisions of the Levites that we talked about before, the Kohathites get nothing. Do you think they felt left out about that, or here's this offering that is to the Lord, and then it's distributed, and two of the three divisions actually get to participate in this and make their work easier, but the Kohathites, by the nature of the fact that they had to carry these things anyway, do you think that any of them were like, well, why do we got to carry all this stuff and nobody else has to carry anything? Carrying stuff through the desert isn't necessarily a lot of fun.
Well, actually, I think there's a fairly straightforward answer to that. The Kohathites had the privilege of carrying the ark and its contents. I think that's what's meant by the holy things. And therefore, I highly doubt they felt left out or less than the others. I mean, they remember that the ark had those rings, and the poles would go through the rings, and they would carry the ark on their shoulders. So they had a way to carry the ark that didn't require it being set on a cart.
But all things considered, if I had my choice, I'd prefer to toss it onto a cart than carry it through the desert for 40 years.
You've probably seen kings or other important people, in other cultures being carried on the shoulders of people.
Yeah, no
I
thanks.
bet you they're so thankful for the privilege of not putting them on a cart.
I think they were probably way too terrified to feel left out.
Sure. No, Eric, your point is well taken. This is obviously much more significant than that, but it is just it's interesting how. And again, I kind of asked this question about the divisions last time. It seems like the text is making a really big deal about this, and I don't really think that the Kohathites feel left out. But yeah, the privilege of carrying the most holy things is interesting. I do wonder, though, if any of them had a thought like, well, we got to carry this stuff. Why doesn't, these other things are also holy. Why don't they have to carry them? They get to load them up and have the oxen and the carts do all the do all the heavy lifting for them.
That makes sense. I think, well, like you already said, I think just the fact that they had the privilege of carrying the ark itself. I don't know that they were going, man, they got a cart, we don't got a cart.
I don't know. As a modern application, and as a modern application, I'm not going to quote any text, but as a modern application, you guys all know you serve in ministry, which is a absolutely amazing call for the Lord to put on you. But there are things that you're called to bear that while you're in the middle of bearing them,
I wouldn't mind an ox and a cart.
Yeah, couldn't I have an ox and a cart instead? Because I'm tired of carrying this thing, right? Like, let's just be honest about us as men and humans as humans. Would it be a great honor for them to carry the ark? Sure. Just like it's a great honor for you to stand up every Sunday and preach. Does that mean that it's never like, man, I wish I could not do this for a Sunday. I wish I could be sitting there and enjoying, and there are many times where those glorious burdens that we've been entrusted to bear feel like exactly that, burdens.
That's fair.
I guess we can keep our eye out if every time the ark gets moved from here on out, if people know it's a privilege to carry it properly, or if maybe they try something different.
Demerit.
I just said we'll keep an eye out.
No,
yeah, we'll see what happens.
We all know
if
what
that's
you're
a
talking
demerit,
about.
I can't even talk anymore.
So if I refer to a future.
You
text,
said you directly quoted a text. You're like, I just did it really sneakily.
As long as I do it in the form of a question, I avoid getting demerits.
We'll keep our eyes out for it. We'll see.
This is your first demerit in weeks. What are you complaining about?
I'm gonna phrase something I wanted to say earlier, just like Joe just phrased it. Perhaps there will be at some point in the future where another priest will uplift his hands in blessing and bless his people even as he's discharging them into his service as he goes away.
All right, one demerit for Micah. Let's move forward. The rest of this chapter is maybe boring for some people, and I think that some people might decide to skip on past it. But the very last verse of chapter 7 is incredibly interesting to me. You get past the offering stuff and the repetition of that, and then you get this description of God speaking to Moses. We've seen God speak to Moses in different ways. The burning bush, he was speaking to him on the mountain. Now here he's speaking to them as this voice kind of, above this certain place in the tent of meeting. You guys have any thoughts or observations about that? And I don't know, I guess, do you guys think a lot of people miss this detail because maybe they skip over the rest of chapter 7 and just jump right into chapter 8? And do you think that this answers some of the questions that we'll see beginning immediately in chapter 8 when it says the Lord spoke to Moses? Like, is this giving us, this is the new medium of Moses isn't just hearing a voice in his head, but he's specifically going to this place to meet with the Lord and to hear the audible voice of God in this place?
I think this explains... certainly some things in chapter 8, but also it explains why we should consider the writings of Moses to be inspired by God and how the information was passed down. God spoke directly to him, and then Moses wrote down, at least in some cases, wrote down what God said. This just answers that question very clearly. People say, well, why should we trust Moses' writings? Why should we trust anyone's writings in the Bible? Well, with Moses heard directly from God, and he wrote down what God told him. That's why we should consider his writings inspired. They came directly from God, and people didn't always receive revelation from God in such a direct way. And the fact that Moses did should have caused the Israelites and everybody else, all of us, to hold him and his writings in very high regard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know this, right? Because I don't know what's coming in the text, but perhaps this stands at a transition point between where God, Moses would go up on a mountain and talk to God, but the people are getting ready to move, maybe. And so this is where Moses is going to be going in and having these these face-to-face conversations with God that we've seen him have in the past, and it's important, and I think it's impactful that we recognize that Moses wasn't operating on the priestly schedule of once a year. This is where Moses would go and speak to God, and exactly as Eric said, receive that authoritative teaching.
It does point to an utter uniqueness in the ministry of Moses that not even other Levites had. I think that you could say that at a minimum. I don't know if you'd say this is like so different from what was happening previously. Because there were times when Moses would just hear from the Lord spontaneously, but then there were also times when he went into the tent of meeting and spoke to him face to face like that. So I don't know if it's so much of a change in the medium of the revelation, but I do think it speaks to the importance about what's about to happen. He goes into the tent of meeting to speak to the Lord, speaks to him from above the mercy seat, and I think that's significant because he's going to start talking about the cleansing of the Levites as they move forward. So I think perhaps the change of scenery here demonstrates the importance of what's about to happen.
Yeah, I think your points are all well made. The difference, if there is one, is simply just seems that this is, this seems less dramatic and less scary. Some of the other things that we've seen before, I mean, quite frankly, the Israelites questioned if Moses could even survive, when he was up on the mountain, when they were down, and we did the whole golden calf, discussion before. Whereas this doesn't seem like, it's not like the tent is like on fire or something like that. I mean, it seems like a much less dramatic and a much more, I don't know the right word for it, but certainly the direct revelation from God to Moses is continuing. But it's interesting to just kind of see how this has morphed over time or changed over time, from catching Moses' attention with the burning bush to have him come over and take a look, to then some of the more dramatic and just huge displays of God speaking to him, to now something that is much more subtle and regular. Again, it's not different in its effect. It's still God speaking the most, but it is some I don't know, just the inclusive nature of now this is kind of traveling around with them, and Moses always has this direct access is pretty cool to see. And I think it's a neat detail that probably some people at least do skip over because they don't want to read the repetition, and all of a sudden this kind of very interesting detail is just snuck in at the very end of this chapter. So I appreciate hearing your guys' thoughts. I don't really have anything else to add beyond that.
Well, let's jump into Numbers chapter 8. I was really curious about this. I'm going to get you guys' opinions. What does it mean that the Levites were presented as a wave offering before the Lord? We've seen in previous chapters other things presented as wave offerings, like produce. But in what sense were the Levites presented as a wave offering to the Lord?
Yeah, I think that it's a symbol of consecration. I think it's obviously a very foreign thing to us, but it's recognizing as you wave something in the air. Now, I have no idea how they would have done this with a human, but it's just recognizing as you wave this thing in the air, it's a public demonstration. This thing is set apart into the service of the Lord. So whatever happens with this thing moving forward, it's the Lord's. I think that's the same thing here with the Levites.
Do you think the Levites did what you see in a stadium? They did the wave. They all sat there and then they just did the.
That's where that started. Yeah, I don't know what else it would have done. Yeah, no, I think I agree with Micah. This, to me, the wave offering seems like another word for a formal presentation. Like, here they are, Lord. These are those set apart for Levitical service. So, doing the wave, of course.
Yeah. Joe, anything to add?
I don't really have anything to add to that. No, I mean, you're asking the question. Do you have thoughts?
Well, nothing different than what they said. A wave offering involved, dedicating something to the Lord, and similarly, the Levites were presented as a wave offering to dedicate them to the service of God. That's what's going on here. That's what they already said. So, I guess we can move on to the next question.
All right. Well, I got one more question. Maybe this will be our last one for today. But in chapter 8, verse 19. It says, I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron and to his sons from among the sons of Israel to perform the service of the sons of Israel at the tent of meeting and to make atonement on behalf of the sons of Israel, so that there will be no plague among the sons of Israel by their coming near to the sanctuary. God explains the purpose of why he gave the Levites, and he said it was as a gift. So any thoughts that you guys have? I just think that's an interesting description of the Levites.
Well, if you remember, the original stipulation is that the firstborn that opened the womb belonged to the Lord, and that's clear even in the Passover. The firstborn in the land of Egypt are the ones whom the angel of death visits and the judgment of God falls on, and they're executed. The substitutionary blood of the lamb stands in the place of those firstborn in that redeeming act of God. But that redemption leads to them belonging to him. Like their redemption through substitution takes them from the realm of everything else into the realm of consecration. Now, the Levites are given as a gift to the children of Israel because it's the Levites instead of your firstborn, essentially. And there might be all sorts of reasons for that, but that's essentially the idea. This is obviously an adjacent point to the question you're asking, but I was struck by how, like if you go back to the Exodus account, the redemption that the Lord provides automatically results in total consecration into his service. So there's no such thing in the Bible as penal substitution without the consecration of the one for whom that substitution is made. When God saves somebody, he puts them into their service, or it puts them into his service. I thought that was sort of interesting part. And then the Levites stand in place of those firstborn.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe more so along practical lines. If you just look at the amount of work that was required to maintain, the tabernacle, and to do all the things that God had called them to do, all the duties that were required. This was an enormous responsibility. I mean, just enormous. And the fact that Aaron and his sons didn't have to do all this by themselves was no doubt a huge gift and blessing to know they had the Levites to help them with all of these tasks. It was, I'm sure they were swelling with joy when they realized that this burden was going to be lifted, or it was going to be helped greatly by the Levites. So that was my simple thought.
Yeah, not only is it a matter of practical significance, but if you think about the nature of the work, right? It was through their service, through the combined efforts of all of them, that the people were able to draw as close as they were to God. They weren't, the normal layperson wasn't allowed to draw closer, but the priests were doing an extremely important work, not only important, but necessary. And so God gave them as a gift. Now, maybe we'll see other people being given as a gift in the future. Be an interesting point to watch out for. See how I did? That's how you do this. But yeah, so we read the New Testament, and we think of priests, we kind of lump them in the same category as the Pharisees or the Sadducees, and we want to make them, if not the villain, at least an unnecessary or an unimportant or an unglorified thing. But they were a gift to Aaron and to his sons, but I believe also to all the people, as Micah pointed out, for this necessary, important, glorious job.
Well, friends, that's going to be our show for today on Numbers chapters 5 through 8. I appreciate your guys' observations and comments. If you're watching this, what do you think? We'd love to hear what you think about these chapters. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Is there observations to make that we didn't make that you'd like to let us know about? Well, we'd like to read those in the comments below. And until we see you again, friends, get equipped, obey your king, and glorify your God.
Demerit.